Hey everyone, it's Stephanie here with a video for My Favorite Things. In this video, I'm going to be creating this fun spring wreath using the new spring wreath stamps and dynamics from My Favorite Things March 2016 release. What I'm going to be doing is doing some stamping first, and then we're going to create a little bit of dimension on this wreath by doing some additional stamping and die cutting. So to start off, I'm going to stamp my base wreath. I'm using Sour Apple ink. I'm really trying to focus on bright, springy colors because I really want this to have a lot of fun, colorful elements to it. So I'm going to go ahead and stamp this on a piece of smooth white cardstock to start off my wreath. Then I'm going to follow up with some Gumdrop Green ink on the wreath here. And I'm just kind of adding this smaller leaf image onto the existing leaves that were stamped when I stamped the original wreath. And I'm just kind of going around and stamping them in between the pre-stamped leaves as well as on top of the single leaves there. And then when I finish that, I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to take the larger set of leaves though and go around and stamp with Versamark ink. And I'm doing this because I'm going to end up embossing on this wreath. So I just want to completely do all of my stamping at once so that I can do all the embossing at the same time. I usually add my embossing powder onto the Versamark ink as I go, just so I can kind of see where I've been. But for this instance here, I'm just kind of lifting up the cardstock panel and kind of tilting it in the light, and that allowed me to see where I was, so I can just continuously go around the wreath. And then I'm going to go ahead and stamp the sentiment as well, and that fits perfectly in the center area of the wreath. That's one of the great things about this stamp set and this wreath is that the sentiments fit perfectly inside. So there's a lot of possibilities with the different sentiments in the set. So now that I have all of the stamping done, I'm just taking some gold embossing powder and I'm going around the whole entire image and adding this to all of the areas that I added either the leaves or the sentiment, and I'm getting it completely covered. And then I'm going to take my heat gun to it and completely heat emboss all of those areas. And we're going to be left with this great shiny gold detail in the wreath, which is going to look beautiful once we do all the layering. It's just a great way to add a little bit more contrast and texture because you have that great bright gold detail kind of hidden in between all the leaves and the flowers when we're finished. And then of course the sentiment looks really nice with that bright gold. So you can see it there now in the light, the great embossed detail that we have. So now before I go further, I'm going to go ahead and cut this wreath out. I'm using the inside and out stitched circle stacks to go ahead and run this through my die cut machine. And I'm going to be left with a circle area that has stitch detail on the circle. And we're going to end up putting this inside of another panel that we're going to cut the circle out of as well. But before we do that, we're going to go ahead and do the stamping for the rest of the elements on the wreath. For this wreath here, I just picked out 3 of the flowers that I liked. They are all different styles and different sizes. And I'm just going to go ahead and use some colorful inks to stamp these directly onto the smooth white cardstock. So I'm starting off with Coral Crush ink, to go ahead and stamp this larger flower. And I'm going to stamp it more times than I need. I ended up not stamping it perfectly the first couple of times. You can see I kind of missed part of a petal. So I just went ahead and continuously stamped this until I had enough for my finished wreath. And then I'm going to take the second largest flower and use Summer Splash ink to stamp this one. I don't really think there's probably Summer Splash ink colored flowers in the world, but I kind of love the contrast of the aqua blue flowers mixed in with other colors. So I usually add the aqua color flowers in any of my card designs. And then I also did a couple of the small tiny flowers with some pineapple ink. And now I'm just taking this 3 dotted stamp detail and I'm adding this to the center of all the flowers, and it just kind of gives a fun contrast to the color and just kind of makes them look a little bit more realistic by giving them a center area. And then I'm going to take all the coordinating dies and run these flowers through my die cut machine until I have all of them cut out. So I can cut out 3 flowers at a time, and I only have 3 of the blue and the yellows. And then once I finish with all of those, I'll run it through a couple more times just to finish with my coral colored flowers, and then I'll be all ready to go ahead and create the wreath. And I love that these are open now, the die, so that you can just kind of lay it on top and get it where you want it, and then you can cut them out. Because I personally like to stamp and then die cut, so the open area really makes that easy now. So now that I have all of the flowers cut out there, you can see them all to the right of the circle area with my wreath. I'm going to go ahead and start adhering these to the wreath. So to create some texture and dimension on this wreath, I'm going to adhere them all in different ways. So a couple of them I'm going to adhere direct to the wreath, so the yellow ones are just getting adhesive right on the back of them and I'm adhering them directly onto the paper. And then I'm going to start to adhere the blue flowers. And with these ones here, I'm going to add one foam square to each of these blue flowers. And I kept everything in odd numbers. So I have 3 of the yellow flowers, and now I'm adding 3 of the blue flowers. And then when we get to the coral flowers, I have 5 of those. So it just really helps to draw the eye around the wreath by having everything in odd numbers. So I went ahead and added those 3 blue ones. And now for these coral ones, I'm going to do a couple of them the same way with just one foam dot, but then a couple of them, like the one I just did here, I'm actually adding 2 foam dots on top of each other. So I'm just putting one onto the flower, taking the adhesive backing off, and then I'm going ahead and adding another foam square directly on top of the original one, and that's going to give it 2 layers of dimension so that they stick up a little bit higher than the blue ones. So when everything is finished and everything is adhered onto the wreath, I actually end up with 3 different levels of flowers. I have the ones that are adhered directly to the paper, I have the ones that are adhered just with one level of foam squares, and then I have a couple that are adhered with 2 levels of foam squares. And this just really makes the wreath so detailed and so realistic looking because it's so textured like a real wreath would be and not flat. So now that I have all the flowers adhered and the wreath is fully assembled, I'm just going to go ahead and finish the card base. I'm using a grout gray card base, top folding, and I cut it down into a square. And then I added a panel of white cardstock that I also cut out with that same inside and out circle stitch dynamics. And this wreath piece is going to fit perfectly in the center area. And I'm going to end up with that great stitching detail on both the outside piece as well as the circle piece that the wreath is on. And it's just a great way to add a little bit of detail to an otherwise pretty plain panel. I wanted the wreath to take center stage on the card, but I still wanted a little bit more detail on all the white space on the outside. So this is a great way to do that. And then to finish off the card, I'm going to add a couple of sequins scattered around the outside area of the wreath, and then that's going to complete the card. So thank you so much for joining us for the March release. I hope you enjoyed this video, and we will see you next time.